Good afternoon, I'm JB Ramos. We're listening to Radyo Kapwa on CKUT 90.3 FM, where all Filipinos are Filipino enough.
Mabuhay, everyone! So it's been a while since I opened, so you just tuned in on Radyo Kapwa on CKUT 90.3 FM. I am once again joined here by my co-host Fran Stoner, Desiree Ruiz, and Fanny Cristo as one of our sound engineer. But of course, we're not forgetting Justin and Laura behind. I know, Laura, you're very busy at the moment. We're seeing you later on. But anyway, we're really happy to have Guro JB Ramos, the lead instructor at Combat Science, Warrior Arts of Science, a traditional Filipino martial arts and self-defense school based in Toronto. He is a certified trauma-informed empowerment self-defense instructor and a world champion martial arts. So because I'm already going kilig a little bit, but I will let Guro JB Ramos to present himself. Welcome, Guro JB Ramos.
Hi, good morning. Thank you for having me. Mabuhay.
Yes, please. Hi, everyone. Fran Stoner here, and I'm so excited to have Master JB with us. They're someone I've been building with over the past few years and just such a gift to the community. I just wanted to say, I work with a lot of our community, and a lot of them would love more access to Filipino martial arts, but also more access to that special piece that Veronica said in your introduction of being trauma informed, of wanting to empower. I think some of the critique I've heard sometimes is that the martial arts can be this very patriarchal, sexist, macho place. Mm-hmm. So yes, please, can you tell us, how did this come about? Tell us about your work. Is it something you grew up with? Is it something you came back to? I want to hear all the stories. And how did it even happen that you're doing this from a trauma-informed lens, which is so needed in our community?
Oh, wow. That's a very good question. I guess growing up, just like a lot of Filipinos, we've heard about our Lolo and Lolas talk about their experiences growing up through the war and them sharing their, the way they were brought up. So an interesting perspective was when my Lola was around, she'd share how her dad, my great-grandlolo, would be doing, playing around with sticks per se in the farm because they grew up in northern Philippines in Tarlac. So the sticks would be representing a lot of the things that I do now, which is arnis practice. But for them, it was a way of life. It wasn't a class, that you go in once a week. It was who they were, who they are, who we are. And growing up hearing those stories of how they survived the war, kind of touched a chord in me growing up, and I never forgot it. So as my dad, growing up, I would hear my dad, and he studied Taekwondo in the Philippines, going through school to be a law enforcement, so police. He went to Manila, so I'd hear him talking about doing self-defense, taking martial arts classes. But back then, it was Taekwondo. Taekwondo and karate was very popular in the 60s in the Philippines. But regardless of what style it was, I always found the ability to defend oneself it was something that resonated with me ever since I was a child, and I couldn't pinpoint what it was and why I had this longing to figure out that connection to who I am. So years passed by, and my family, finally my dad was like, okay, we're going to enroll you to take a karate class in the local community center. And I did that for a while throughout grade school and part of high school. And I guess life happened, things changed, and I stopped studying Okinawan karate part of high school. And I think for me, high school is very formative year for a lot of people, and bullying was really something that I had to deal with constantly. Coming out and being who I was in a Catholic high school was very difficult, and I had no support. So I would always end up getting in fights trying to defend myself, and there was no one to talk to. basically zero support with friends at that time because a lot of them, they would disown you and you were too afraid to come out to family. But I think that's another discussion we could elaborate on. Years passed after high school, and I became active in the Filipino community here in Toronto. We had a social support group called Babaylan, which is still around today. A lot of the members, well, we're a lot, older now, so we've kind of passed on to just like you, friends. The next generation is coming over, but with Babaylan, we did a lot of anti-racism workshops, for Filipino youth, us connecting with their culture, Filipino heritage classes, learning the language for those, that were born in the Philippines. And during the 90s, we did a lot of activism as well with other groups. Another one that was we connected with was based out of New York. They're still around, but their members also have moved on to other aspects of social activism. They were called Kilawin Colectivo. So through the 90s, early 2000s, we did a lot of work and collaborations together. And one time, let's throw back into how I got reconnected to doing martial arts. One of the conferences that we had in Toronto to bring Kilawin to our city, because we tended to go back and forth between New York and Toronto. We had one here, and one of the Babaylan members had a connection to a Taekwondo school, the Santos Martial Arts. They're still around. So they're like, oh, I have a space that we could probably have access to do a couple of our workshops. So we had one of them there. And as soon as I walked in the school, a light just went off again. And that old feeling it just came back. I was like, oh, this feels so familiar. It's something I've been missing and longing, was this kind of community and that inner warrior, right? But there's still something lacking. Even though I really love the school, I love the training, I love the community, there's that thing that I felt that was missing for me. So years progressed. I trained in Taekwondo and got my second degree black belt. We had a guest instructor um, and did a Arnis workshop, an Arnis class, and she became my teacher. She branched off of her school and wanted to start her own. So when she pulled out those sticks and I just saw her moving it around and doing a demo, I was like, wow, what is that? I have not seen that ever, like the way she did it, because this was going back 20 years ago, over 20 years ago. And from then I got hooked. I joined her school shortly after. I was trying to cross train between Taekwondo and Arnis. But there came a point that my soul was longing to have that connection to the warrior art where we're from. And in the early 2000s, when our school first started, there were only a handful of Filipino martial arts schools that were in Toronto, and all of them had, as you said, it was very patriarchal. A lot of them were men, old school Filipino men or non-Filipino men teaching it. And I needed something that would be a bit more welcoming, and open-minded for other people to join. And my teacher, she was just starting, but the knowledge that she passed and I found that connection with her I just have always been with her ever since. Although she's non-Filipino, she's trained in the Philippines going back and forth since the late 1980s. So that wealth of knowledge, her connection to our roots, was very inspiring for me, because she had that respect that a lot of Filipinos don't have for our own warrior arts and culture. And at that time, that was one of the rare opportunities that I found to find a teacher with that mindset. So as years progressed, I was one of her first students, and we trained and competed internationally at world championships for full contact stick fighting. And one interesting thing, I've been competing since the early 2000s to represent Canada on Team Canada, was the majority, I would have to say back starting the early 2000s when I started, majority were non-Filipino. At least 80% were non-Filipino, and that less than 20% were Filipinos. Filipino martial arts has been practiced all over the world. Um, and since I started, I think it's only within the last, 5 to 7 years that there's been this resurgence of our fellow Kapwa wanting to know about our warrior ancestors, our warrior roots, our cultural, the importance of it as a people. And I think that's one thing that I've been longing to do, this work for the past 20 years, was for our own people to realize what we have to offer. Because a lot of the people that I've seen on the journey studying at my school were non-Filipinos. And for a while that was kind of frustrating, because other people found our own culture more fascinating than our own people. Um, but I stuck to it. I never lost sight of what we have to offer culturally, and I think that seeing the work finally um, give back to our community, which I've been doing ever since the school's inception, is finally starting to be noticed. And I think that's one big thing that I'm thankful for. So I think that's about where I am now in a nutshell. Oh, and I guess trauma informed perspective. Let me throw that in quickly before we start our discussion. I guess ever since I've been doing martial arts, and especially the FMA, I started to teach self defense. And self defense in the context of stranger danger, learning how to defend yourself if a random person would attack you, physical skills. But it wasn't like I learned a lot of, some of the basic concepts of when you teach self-defense, what do you do? How do you do it? When do you apply this technique? Et cetera, et cetera. But it wasn't until 2018 when I was formally introduced to, as people would coin it, empowerment self-defense. The organization, it was formed with a group of feminist women, martial arts, and other people who are active since the late 60s, early 70s, teaching a feminist perspective in teaching self-defense for vulnerable populations. But it wasn't until about 2017 that they wanted to have something that was universally, and globally certified, so people would be trained very similarly, and being more recognized as a developing organization, so everyone could be recognized globally and have the same credentials. And trauma-informed self-defense resonated with me because of a lot of things I had to go through growing up, not only within our own culture, but also being within the queer community, being bullied, and that was something that I found very much needed. Although there's been a lot of progress since I did a lot of the work in the 90s, there's still a lot more to go. And this work is ongoing, and it's sad, but it's needed. And I think that's one thing that I've always kept my eye on how can I develop myself as a leader, as a teacher, and to be offering things that are relevant to where society is leading today, and to be that person that I wanted to be, have access to as a younger person. Although I've trained with martial artists since I was in grade school, I found that it was a man who taught it. But I think there's a lot of progress to be made, and a lot of things, especially when you're doing the kind of advocacy and work, teaching self-defense, and doing trauma-informed work is something that it's always good to refresh and learn the foundations of how you can make it inclusive for everyone to be able to have that open mind with. So yeah, there we go.
Cool. Thanks. Thank you so much, JB. I kind of just want to rewind back to some things you were speaking about earlier about representation, because like as you can see, we're doing this interview on video right now, but so the viewers, the listeners can't see this right now, but behind me is like a wall full of comic books, right? And I remember growing up, I would always see like our niece in the comic books, right? But there would never be any mention of like the Filipino link. You would see like Nightwing from the Batman comics, like always with the two sticks, or even Daredevil fighting with his batons, same style. Or even just recently, like DC's Legends of Tomorrow, they had Katie Lotz like fighting with our niece. But the thing is, like, they would never ever bring up the link between that fighting or like that martial arts and like like the Filipino roots. So it's like, yes, we get representation, but we don't get representation at the same time. It's a funny space like that. So I guess I just kind of want to. Well, yeah, I want to thank you also for bringing our niece and the Filipino links more to the forefront. But I also, I guess, just want to ask, how do you see, or where do you see our niece going to, like in the mainstream media, or just like in the perception of people going forward, like I guess in the future?
Oh wow! I guess the mainstream media, you could see it a lot in the movies. I guess the one that really stood up that a lot of people had no idea was Born Identity. All of those, the movie franchise had it in every one of them. And I guess one of the scenes that I really liked was when he fought the guy with a pen. Did you see that scene in The Office? But I think a lot of people don't realize that the stuff that we do, it's not only with the sticks. You can translate the stick into knife, into empty hand, into fighting on the ground, because Arnis is a warrior art form, in a form of resistance. And I guess seeing it in the future, I guess I'm just going to keep still doing my work and, hoping that the next generation would take interest and let it continue. There was a point in time that I actually questioned the work that I was doing. Is it making a difference? Is anyone noticing? Any Filipinos wanting to know more about it besides basketball? Because there's a point, honestly, I was getting disheartened that I just wanted to throw in the towel and give up. Um, like a lot of people doing the work that we do, you hit bumps in the road. A lot of people don't believe in the stuff that you do. And I think when I hit that bump in my road, it was either I was going to give up and like, okay, I don't think there's a future for Filipino martial arts in Toronto, because a lot of the cis male in the media, those bigger and blingy FMA schools tend to make a bigger impact. But if you notice, a lot of their philosophies and why they teach it could be slightly different from the way I put it out. And my vision for where Filipino martial arts will be would be, I guess, similar to what I was taught from my teacher and my teachers back home, was to make it accessible, to make the next generation see the worth of what we have, and hopefully reach more people globally throughout the world. Last year, I had the opportunity to teach trauma-informed self-defense in the Philippines and travel throughout the Philippines to different groups, different schools, different ages, and that in itself made me see the bigger picture of why this work is needed. I've been offering these courses in Toronto, and there are times that, although Toronto's a big city, you don't realize how small it is, because a lot of people don't really, or they kind of like, I would guess, yep, go ahead.
I didn't say this before, but I'm actually originally from Toronto, so I completely get what you're saying. It's like when I moved here to Montreal, I found that the Filipino community is big but small enough too that everybody knows each other. Whereas in Toronto, like, yeah, we're a huge population, but it's like a whole bunch of silos, I guess. and yeah, all these silos don't really interact because there's just a whole bunch of mini communities amongst themselves. So I don't know if that's what you were trying to get at, but that's how I felt in Toronto.
Exactly. I think we resonate with the same meaning because you feel the same thing.
Can I just jump in and say that
I was like, no, me, no.
Wait, no, I wanted to say my piece. But I just wanted to say that I do really think Guru JB your work, because there are moments where we feel like, am I doing the right thing? But when I was in my first, one of the first times that I'm on my decolonization journey, I actually went back to Amnis. Not went back. Well, I went back because, as off the record, I was saying how in my school, because I grew up in the Philippines, we do have Amnis as a physical education, and those videos you see were a Chinese students were in one formation and they do their formation. We used to do that, and I find doing the forms and doing the drills very it felt like home for me. And when I was trying to get to know more the Philippines, and we found out that we have the warrior tribe, the Kapampangan, and it was already with us, but this was taken, so to speak. We weren't. It was almost erased from us, right? And I was very thankful that in my school it was part of the curriculum, but also your own practice. And I just wanted to say that when I was practicing it, the whole philosophy for me, the Alnis, is not only that we were forbidden to have arms to protect ourselves, but we found ways to still protect ourselves. And with Alnis, all of your movements are counted, right? So when you're trying to do an offense, it's actually also a defense. So for me, that type of practice is you calculate everything. And once you have a whole practice, you forgot that you already have a control over yourself. The way you breathe, you take 2 steps and then you breathe out and then you release that emotion. And so my way of practicing the forms, the drills, is basically also practicing my emotions. And why do you practice this? Oh, because today has a tough day and you want to release that energy because you don't want to bring it. So it's not only a martial arts for me, it's a practice in itself. And the mere fact that we use that historically for our pre-colonial, it's just that's the connection. And for you to have a practice where you want to be more as inclusive as possible for everyone else to use, because at the end of the day, we live in a patriarchal society. We do need to self-defense ourselves, and sometimes we're not holding amnes, right? So the mere fact we can disarm people with with our hands is great enough for us. It felt like the ancestors giving you ways to protect you, even if you don't have anything with your hands. So I just wanted to point that out. And I know that when I start posting it here and there, people were curious, but I just follow your videos and I just follow other people's videos, So there are other ways to do it, and it's really different. It's a matter of perspective and your willingness to actually practice, and where's the hugot coming from, right? And for me, it was really my decolonization journeys. I just wanted to point that out. Go ahead, Des.
Hi, JB.
Hello.
I so many light bulbs and fireworks went off as I was listening to you share. I was born in Canada. My parents migrated here in the 70s. They were older. They had us past 40. So I never grew up with grandparents because my grandparents passed away. So I didn't have the Lola, the close elders around me. So hearing you say, and so I've never heard of Arnis until recently when Vero reposting and showing up to events with her sticks. So I had never heard of Arnis. And then also hearing you say, the warrior archetype, again, listening to you speak was just a testament to how much of our culture and our spirituality has been erased and how disconnected we have been, right? Because I never grew up with that, but then but my dad would always be when I was younger and watching, the Jackie Chan movies or the Bruce Lee movies, he was like, the butterfly knife comes from the Philippines. And I remember thinking, again, just a testament to how brainwashed our psyches are. I was like, yeah, whatever, Dad. No, it's not. It's Chinese. You know what I mean? And not believing my father because society has brainwashed our culture, our ancestors have been brainwashed for so many years to think it doesn't belong to us, or like to be so disconnected from our roots and our cultures and our practices. So I just want to shout out to all of the people along your journey, like all of those pings that have kind of been like directing you. And like we say this often, like we're so spirit guided and ancestor guided. And it's just so beautiful with all of the interviews that we've done on Radio Kapwa to see how the ancestors have guided so many of us and sent these signs, like, and hearing you say also like, it wasn't Taekwondo, but there's something that just didn't feel right. Same with me growing up in the 80s, like everyone was in Taekwondo and I would watch them at the church and I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. And it felt like I felt a disconnect, right? And funny enough, my daughter's actually starting jujitsu Tuesday this week because I'm feeling called now. I think it's with my decolonization work over the last few years. I was like, no, I'm feeling called, like, pick something, and we're feeling called to do a martial arts. And so she's actually starting jujitsu. So I'm really excited for her to take the course that you'll be offering at our conference in October. But yes, all this to say, just thank you for following spirit. Thank you for listening to your gut. Thank you for sharing the stories. Thank you for planting the seed, because it's true. This freaking work takes time. You know what I mean? It takes time because we are so brainwashed, because we are so disconnected. But we are all feeling a sense of, there's like this intangible feeling that we can't articulate, right? There's this feeling of like, no, Taekwondo is not quite for me. Karate is not quite for me. Everything's being taught by a white person. Got it, but it's not for me. Like there's this, but we just don't know what or where to go or what to do. So I guess my question is, what would you tell your older self or somebody that might be listening to this that is maybe in martial arts or maybe feeling that like, you know what I mean? Like, would you tell them to, like, what would you tell your younger self, like to look up pre-colonial Filipino martial arts? I don't know. Like, what would you love to, I would tell everyone to go follow you and find you, right? But is there something you would do to help guide folks that are maybe feeling like called to something but not quite sure where to go?
That's a good question. I guess, just like, me and you, growing up in the 80s, we didn't have access to internet. We had access to the library or like that.
Or whatever the church was offering, whatever they were offering at the church, that's what we had. So for me, it was basketball, pageantry, Taekwondo. And I picked basketball because it was kind of cool, right? And social. And I like to socialize. Taekwondo, I was like, too much discipline. No, I don't want to do that. But yeah, not many options back then.
No, and I guess like looking at how society has changed and accessibility is very easier for this generation growing up. If our younger selves had access to the internet and looking up a lot of resources out there, I'd say look it up. But I guess for me, for my younger self, I would say follow your path. Your journey is yours to experience. And as much as sometimes when you try to push something so bad, it just doesn't work out. But to trust that journey and the process of where it's leading you to. I know that a lot of the people that I've met in my work, we've all had this calling and wanting that community, just like what is Kapwa to all of us. And since the 90s, we were all trying to figure that out. And I think, trust the community that you're making it with. And in terms of wanting to know about Filipino martial arts, there are a lot of schools out there, but there are not many. Like each one is individual, but the way that my school is it's community based and very much trauma informed in terms of what we teach. And my teacher passed on a lot of those values to me. And one interesting thing is that she passed the school on to me in 2012 because she reached a branching of where she wanted to take it to, in terms of her own growth and her own journey. So when we were leaving Cebu from the World Championships after I won a world title, I won 2 gold medals that time in the competition. She was like, "Okay, I think she's been thinking in her own journey as a martial artist and also as a healer, because she does a lot of energy work, and that kind of thing, spiritual work. So she's like, she wanted to branch out and focus a lot of that work moving forward, because in martial arts, not only about hurting, it's about healing. Less like we have hilot, and all of those kind of things. So I think her journey was to work on the healing aspect of where martial arts leads to, whatever art that might be, and hers was the Filipino martial arts. So she sat me down when we were waiting for the airplane, and I had no idea. I was still on this high, yay, I won. We're going back to Toronto and, represent Canada. And so I had this certain high. And she sits me down for a serious conversation. And she's like, JB, I think I want to close the school. I'm like, you can't close the school. Because her goal was to have a few students and let them grow in their own journey and learning about the FMA, which is Filipino martial arts. So I think she found that she was done her path. But interesting about that, she's still teaching and coming to classes and doing it on the side. But after that conversation we had, I go, do you think I'm ready? I go, I still think I'm just a student. I go, I don't know. I go, you can't close a school. There's so much knowledge to give. If you cut it, it's like cutting off my legs when you said that. I go, can't close it. There's so much to give and so much other people to touch, so many lives to make a difference in. And then, because I asked her, I go, you think I'm ready? And she goes, I think you are if you ask me that question. Because sometimes when you think you know everything, you really don't. But if you keep that beginner's mind to everything, there's always room for growing. And instructors who think that they know everything, that they really don't. And I think to have that open mind, that open perspective, that growth is a constant, that in itself makes you a good teacher. And I think that was one thing that she was looking for. So
that's so powerful. Like, to remember that no matter what level you're at, like, we're constant students in this game of life, right?
mm-hmm.
My goodness, so many things. I really think so. There's this question that we ask everyone at each episode, and I'd love for us to spend a little bit of time because I do think it's really important. Some things that came up a lot today was like, we're all on this path and we're doing these things, and that wasn't quite the thing, right? How you're doing taekwondo, you're doing karate, but there's still something missing. And I definitely was on that journey too, where I was like, I was doing yoga. I even lived in India for a while and I felt super connected to nature, but there was also this piece that was missing, and I didn't figure it out until I went back to our pre-colonial spirituality. So just like folks don't realize when sometimes you don't have the words at the beginning, that oh, wait, we have babaylans, it's this return to babaylan spirit. Oh, wait, we have these powerful warriors in our lineage. And it's like this return to warrior spirit that we don't realize we need. And then that's the piece that actually ends up making us feel more whole, because the common thread with all of us is the not enoughness, right? There was something that wasn't enough. And so basically my question to you is, in what ways in this work have you been told that you weren't Filipino enough? And I'd love for you to also speak a little bit more about like just that intersection of queerness, right? Because I've also heard this a lot from our queer kapwa of like, I always thought something was wrong with me. And then I realized actually even the babaylans were queer, right? They were honored because they were queer. Now we can pray and honor our queer ancestors and our transcestors. So yeah, if you could talk about just feeling not Filipino enough and kind of this return, right?
Oh, I guess. Wow. Growing up, I think just like a lot of us, we grew up kind of not knowing about what it meant to be Filipino, and my parents trying to assimilate to growing up in Toronto. Um, in the 70s, there's still a lot of racism in Toronto. So I think that my parents tried to kind of, I guess, fit in and do what they can, and erase speaking the language at home unless they were mad. And growing up, although I knew how to speak Tagalog, it was very broken, and my parents only spoke to me when they were angry, or a lot of the things that you see that stereotype when you look up things. And that connection to the language was something I was craving for. And in the 80s, we had Filipino classes, and that helped me to figure out to become a little bit more Filipino because I was found that there was something missing. Um, because not being Filipino is although we knew how to eat the food, we didn't have TFC, Filipino channel growing up in the 70s. There was none of that. They had maybe a Filipino newspaper that came out once a month back then. Um, and I think I always felt that need of being Filipino and not feeling Filipino enough, because a lot of people would mistaken me for not being Filipino. Growing up, like, what are you? I'm like, I'm Filipino. And that made me question, what is it? What am I? People would have mistaken me for being, Spanish, everything else but Filipino. And that question, okay, what does it mean to be Filipino besides how I look like? And I think that's where my journey started, was ever since I was younger, because I didn't know what it meant, and not feeling Filipino enough was something that kind of resonated with me throughout the decades. Um, and I guess the intersectionness with being queer, um, that was important for me. And moving on to the 90s and finding the Babaylan group with doing that work, all being, a lot of us being either born or raised in Toronto, and a lot of us identifying within the queer spectrum, and doing that anti-racism decolonization work in the 90s was something very important to each one of us, and that brought us together to figure out more about our Filipino culture and how important this work was. And I think since the 90s it kind of just resonated until now.
See, this is why I self-proclaim to be the flag bearer of not only the pride flag but the Filipino flag. Whenever we do our walks, like I would put on the Filipino flag actually on my stick, like nowadays, and other people, especially here in Montreal, the neighborhoods, the vibe is different every time you go out another metro station. It's a completely different vibe. This is more people. People are speaking more French in here, and like you can see a lot of the background. So whenever we do take a walk, it's like a statement. It's a physical declaration that Filipinos are walking the streets now, and literally we have the flag. If we want to do what the colonizers do and put the flag on, then I'm doing exactly that. So thank you so much for actually just staying true to yourself and being like, I'm Filipino. And earlier as well, you talked about how this journey up, what does what does being Kapwa mean? So I also I don't think I caught the answer for that one. So I, as the last question, for all of our interviewers in Radyo Kapwa, we just asked them like, what does Kapwa mean to you?
I guess with all the work that I've been doing since the 90s, it would be community and interconnectedness, and of being of service to fellow Filipinos. And I think that's something that has resonated me ever since. So I hope that helped answer the question in a nutshell.
That's it. But people forget that there's no literal translation. So when people say like, oh, my fellow Filipino, my fellow neighbor, it it kind of meant like my kapwa Filipino, my kapwa neighbors. So that's a little trick that I tell people who's learning Tagalog as well. But there we go. I really thank you for taking this time to share and pass down the knowledge and the history of it, and continue being the bearer of our martial art practice, pre-colonial martial art practice here in the Turtle Island. I know you're in from Toronto, but we can do it whenever, like especially with the technology right now. And also, I shall see you in October for our upcoming conference organized by Sant Kapwa. So for those who still listening, you're listening to Radyo Kapwa on CKUT 90.3 FM. This is Veronica, and handa! Mabuhay!
It's been raining in Manila, hindi ka ba nilalamig? And it's been raining in Manila, hindi ka ba nilalamig? But if it's raining in Manila, hindi kita maririnig. So I'll be waiting in Manila kahit di ka nababalik. Maulan ba sa inyo pag bumubuhos dito? Paumanhin at mukhang hindi ko masasabayan ang iyong yapak sa pagngiti at pag-iyak, sa paglipad at pagbagsak ng araw-araw. Sa pagpikit na lang kita matititigan sa mata, sa panaginip na magpapaligaw. Kamusta ka na kahit wag nang sagutin? Di ba na wala ang kintab ng bituin? Sana ganun ka nga pa rin. 'Cause it's been raining in Manila, hindi ka ba nilalamig? Mahirap bang mag-isang nanginginig? And it's been raining in Manila, hindi ka ba nilalamig? Pag wala ang mga tala, madilim ba ang mundo? May kulang ba sa inyo na naiwan dito? Aanhin ang ulan sa paraiso. So kahit madulas ay dati malapit ka, ngayon walang kahati ng init pag maulan. Sana naman tumigil ang ulan. Kamusta ka na kahit wag nang sagutin? Di ba na wala ang kintab ng bituin? Sana ganun ka nga pa rin. 'Cause it's been raining in Manila, hindi ka ba nilalamig? Mahirap bang mag-isang nanginginig? And it's been raining in Manila, hindi ka ba nilalamig? Pag wala ang mga tala, madilim ba ang mundo?
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is JB Ramos. I am a youth leader and community organizer here bringing you important news back home in the Philippines. The article is from Al Jazeera with the title, Philippines drug artist Pura Luca Vega arrested for offending religion. A drag queen in the Philippines has been arrested after their recital of the Lord's Prayer dressed in an outfit resembling Jesus Christ triggered outrage in the mostly Catholic country. Amadis Fernando Pagente, who performs as Pura Luca Vega, was arrested on Wednesday in relation to their June performance during Pride in Manila of Amanamin, a punk rock version of the Lord's Prayer. The video later went viral and was condemned by a number of prominent religious figures as well as lawmakers. The Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines called the performance blasphemous and disrespectful to the church. The Philippines for Jesus movement and some other Christian groups meanwhile filed a criminal complaint, and the performer was declared persona non grata in 17 parts of the country, including Manila and the southern city of Cebu. Vega, a 33-year-old, was charged with breaching a law that prohibits incidents or immoral plays, scenes, acts, or shows that offend any race or religion. The charges carry a jail term up to 12 years as well as potential fines. Vega's performance may offend some, but it is protected expression under international human rights law. Ryan Thorison, a specialist in human rights Watch Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender Rights Program, said in a statement, freedom of expression includes artistic expression that offends, satirizes, or challenges religious beliefs. Amid the outcry over a video in July, Vega defended themselves on X, formerly known as Twitter, saying that performance was their way of praising God. I understand that people call my performance blasphemous, offensive, or regrettable, Vega wrote. However, they should not tell me how I practice my faith or how I do my drug. The performance was not for you to begin with. It is my experience and my expression of having been denied my rights. Speaking to the AFP news agency following their detention, Vega said they had done nothing wrong and that their arrest highlighted the degree of homophobia in the Philippines. Thorson said the charges should be dropped and Vega released. After Vega's arrest, the hashtag Free Pura Luca Vega became a top trending topic on X in the Philippines. Nearly 80% of the Philippines population is Catholic, and the country remains deeply conservative with divorce, abortion, and same-sex marriage all banned. The article was written and published on October 6, 2023. Thank you so much for listening. Maraming salamat sa pakikinig. Once again, this is Jamarin Reyes delivering you Philippine news from abroad.
Taas na naman mga alon, nalulunod sa aking ilusyon. Ba't ganon? Sino yun? At ngayon kaliwa naging kanan, nang biglang may napadaan, nagising sa katotohanan. Ang patutunguhan, mahal, ikaw lang ang nakikita ng bulag kong paningin. Ikaw lang ang ilaw sa dilim. Diretso lang tingin sa hilaga, abot tanaw ang iyong hiwaga. Timog silangan at kanluran, sa alon, nakatuon sa iyong direksyon, ang tugon sa aking pag-ahon. Napadpad sa kailaliman ng karagatan. Ika'y nakita at umilaw ang aking daan. Gabay tungo sa iyong kanungan. Mahal, ikaw lang ang nakikita ng bulak kong paningin. Ikaw lang ang ilaw sa dilim. Diretso lang tingin sa hilaga, abot tanaw ang iyong hiwaga. Timog, silangan at kanluran, ikaw pa rin ang patutunguhan. Sa hilaga, abot tanaw ang iyong hiwaga. Timog, silangan at kanluran, ikaw pa rin ang patutunguhan. Diretso lang tingin sa hilaga, abot tanaw ang iyong hiwaga. Timog, silangan at kanluran, ikaw pa rin ang patutunguhan. When I saw you on screen, I didn't mean to fall so hard. What the hell was I supposed to do? Should I send you roses, baby? Should
Centre Kapwa is hosting Kapwa Rising, Healing and Hoping in the Face of Anti-Asian Racism from October 13th to 15th. And you need to sign up and be a member to be in the know. Otherwise, you'll also be missing up on upcoming events. While we generally promote our events on socials, we sometimes host members-only events like the Powwow Road Trip that happened about 2 weeks ago. The only way to get notified about these members-only events is to sign up on our website at centrecapwa.org. That is centrecapwa.org. Hope to see you there. Every Thursday starting from October 5th to November 23rd, the Montreal LGBTQ+ Community Center and the Centre National des Grands Ballets Canadiens de Montréal are proud to announce their dance projects pre-registration, Danse Inclusive. Free dance workshops will be offered weekly to registered individuals aged 15 to 30 inclusively. For more information, you can visit their Instagram page at Jeunesse Engagée, Involved Youth. Saturday, October 14th, Hike Montreal curated outdoor experiences with the goal to empower, showcase, and normalize Black, racialized, and marginalized groups in reclaiming outdoor spaces through community-based activities. And they're providing a free teen hike from 15 to 19 years old with transport included. It's an intermediate trail at Mont-Tremblant National Park in collaboration with at CWF_FCF and their official footwear sponsor, Morel Canada. For more information, visit their Instagram page at Hike Montreal. And on Sunday, October 15th, Vent Over Tea, a free and confidential active listening service to all members of the local community to promote mental wellness and connection, is collaborating with multidisciplinary artist Saria Shatila. There'll also be photographer, community organizer, and event producer Terry Reyes, who'll bring you along on our 4th photo walk taking place in the Miland neighborhood. This event is free and open to all. You don't need to bring a photographer to attend. For more information, visit their Instagram page at VentOverT and Terry Reyes. That's Terry with TERRIE .Reyes, REYES. And lastly, Kabanka, a nonprofit organization serving and providing opportunities for youth to lead the conversation and action on issues and interests, is recruiting right now. They're looking for members to join their team. Namely, they need a director of outreach and external affairs, a director of mentorship finance, and communications committee member. So if that is interesting to you, I'd strongly recommend looking them up at kambanka.org.
Magandang hapon, nakikinig kayo sa Radyo Kapwa, CKUT 90.3 FM, where all Filipinos are Filipino enough. Liberation for one is liberation for all of us. Tuloy ang laban.